Brian is a special collections librarian for DPL's Western History and Genealogy Department, and he's been with DPL for 13 years. He's a graduate of CU Boulder with his postgraduate work, his MLS, done at the University of British Columbia. He has roots in Colorado that stretch back to the 19th century. So without further ado, I'll transfer the controls to Brian, and we hope you enjoy the program.
All right, good deal. Well, thank you everybody for joining us today and for joining us remotely. This is a pretty fun subject, and what I'm going to be talking about today, usually a lot of this, all this you'd be able to come into the building and do, with the current situation. Of course, we can't do that, but a lot of the resources we're going to be talking about today, you can do remotely, and we'll also be giving you some information about how you can get more information from us if you run into a dead end and you need some help. We are, even though our doors are closed, we're still operational and we're still providing reference services to people. And we're happy to do so. So without any further ado, I'm going to share my screen here and we will get started. All right. So this is House Histories with DPL. And honestly, maybe this title isn't exactly accurate. It should almost be Denver House Histories with DPL, because that is kind of our main area of expertise, is the Denver area with a little bit of the metro area in there. And we'll talk about that kind of towards the end. But we have a lot of great resources. If you have a house in Denver, usually we can help you find something. And it's always kind of a mixed bag what we're going to find. Sometimes we'll find a lot about a house. We'll find so much. And then sometimes it's like the house didn't exist at all. No, we'll get started and we'll see the kind of resources that we're working with. Here we go. So the resources that we have here in the building cover quite a bit of ground. We have Assessor Records that'll tell you a lot of information about who owned not only the houses, but the land. We have building permits with some limitations, but those are a great source of information. We have Denver directories that can tell you that you can look up by address and by names. You can learn a lot about the people who lived in the homes from there. Extensive maps, many of which are available for high resolution digital downloads as well. That includes our Sanborn atlases, the fire insurance atlases. We have extensive newspaper holdings, which are a little bit difficult to access these days, but we can definitely help you out with that. We have obituaries and obituary indexes that can tell you a lot about the people who are in the homes. Denver neighborhood history books, many of which circulate, but which we can also help you access as well as our Ancestry.com and our genealogical resources. We have a pretty extensive genealogy collection here, and it is very useful when you're doing house histories. And we have some expanded access to those resources that I'll talk about in a little bit. So if you, if you want to follow along on your own computer at home, you can do that too, but I'll just kind of walk you through the basics of how you might start a house history here using our resources. So, oops, wrong way. So we have a site called history.denverlibrary.org. It's got a lot of different resources on it, including, as you can see up there in the right-hand corner, our genealogy resources and our photo collections. But the one we're going to focus on today is Denver's buildings and neighborhoods. So if you go to the site, denverlibrary.org, click that link, it'll take you to this page. And you'll see on the right-hand corner there is our history tutorial, which is where we're going to be working off of today. But some other things that you're going to might want to know about on this page as well. In the lower left-hand corner, you'll see the index map, the historic buildings, the atlases. Those are going to be really helpful to you. The neighborhood history guides, especially now because some of our more specialized materials you just can't get to, but these neighborhood history guides have a lot in them. But when you're starting your house history, you want to start out with the building history tutorial. And when you click on that, it'll take you to this page. And before you get even really very far at all, there's a vital piece of information about your house you're going to want to know, and that is the legal description of your home. And most of us don't really think too much about that, but The legal description tells you it's how the city defines the place of your house. So it'll be the subdivision. Every house in Denver is in a subdivision. It'll tell you the block number. Every block in Denver has a block number, and the lot numbers that your property is on. And you may be on, 1 or 2 or 3 full lots. They're usually in Denver, they're 12 by 24-ish, roughly. And that'll tell you exactly where your house is. So to get to that information, you can click on our website, on our building history tutorial. There's a link to the real property search. Sometimes this doesn't always work. You have to try a couple browsers. Honestly, sometimes I'll just go to Google and just search real property records Denver, and that'll take you to this same page too. So if you run into any of those problems, that'll take you to the City of Denver's taxation and assessment system. Put in the address of your home, and it'll pop back some information, including the name of the owner of the home, which may be you or somebody else, the assessed value, and some other information. But most importantly, it will have your legal description. And you can see that, that highlighted box there. So what that says is this house that we use, for example, 2822 Ray Street, it's in the Clayton's Edition, block 17, lot 10, and the south half of lot 9. So not every house is going to be, 2 full lots. There's a lot of easements and things like that you'll see in here. Something to note when you see this page, you'll see the year built, effective year built. We find that that's not always exactly accurate. A lot of times it is, but if you see it and it's way off from what you think it is, that might not be the case. But this important information that you're going to want to have handy through your house search is this legal description with the subdivision, the block, and the lot numbers. So with that information in hand, you can go back to our tutorial, click on the Assessor Records, and you'll see a link that says Denver Assessor's Records Index Map. And that's this map here you see in the picture with all those gray dots on it. Each one of those dots is a block. So when you zoom in, it won't look so clustered. When you first look at it, sometimes you'll think like maybe that's my house or something or not, but it's not. And once you click on it, you'll see your neighborhood, and it'll just be usually 1 dot per block, as is the case with 2282 Ray Street. Now, if you look just to the left of that, you'll see there's a block that has 2 dots. And what we found usually when there's 2 dots, that means that there's some odd shaped lots. Each one of those will be a separate click. And when you click back, if you click on one of the dots and you say like, oh, that wasn't my house, that was some odd shaped lot, you'll have to click back to that big map and zoom back in again. It's just kind of one of those things. But when you get to for example, 2282 Ray Street, you click on that dot and it'll take you to a page that looks like this. And what this is it's a plat map. So pretty much every block in Denver has one of these, and you can see the lots are all uniform sizes. So if you know, for example, that we are lots 10 and the south half of lot 9, you'll just be able to count down there and you'll be able to see your property. And you can see those faint marks where they've marked off half lots and things like that. You'll see all kinds of quirks in here. So don't be surprised if it's something weird that you're not expecting. But when you're looking at this page, you'll know right away you're at the right page, because here you can see right at the top, it says block 17, Clayton's Edition. If you see anything besides what you're looking for, you were definitely on the wrong page. Go back. And then, so to find the information about your house is a little counterintuitive. Start here at the highest number page. It's like you're reading a book backwards. And when you click on that biggest number, it'll take you to this page. We have thousands of these pages. Some of them are really easy to read. Some of them are remarkably beautiful handwriting. And most of them are kind of in the middle like this one. This is a pretty typical example. You see there's the block number, there's the edition, and there's several columns, and you see the one that says grantee number. So that's the person who owns the house at that time, or the property. And this is important to remember. you might look at this and it'll be your lots and everything, but it could be before the house was built. So this doesn't mean this house was built in 1906 necessarily, just that Mr. Patterson owned the lot in that time. And if you look here on the left, you can see there's lot 10 and the south half of lot 9. You see underneath it, there's another one of those. There's one of those ones that's kind of different. You see there's all kinds of variations, but this one in particular, and you can see the date of the filing. So this guy definitely owned it in 1906. So to follow these records, you take the grantee number, the person who owns the house. So when they own the house, they'll be the person who sells the house, and then they will become the grantor. So the grantee number becomes the grantor number. So this number 11 will be in the grantor column when the house or the property is sold. And you can see in this case, the next time it's sold is to this Hugh B. Kellogg in 1939. And if you look, you see there's another column all the way at the right-hand side that says kind of instrument. So that's how the house was sold. And you can see there's a Q for quit claim. There's a W for warranty deed. Sometimes you'll see some other things, will, whatever. But that'll tell you a little bit about the sale. So a lot of times if the house is being passed amongst family members, you'll see that it's a quit claim or, something like that. And you'll also see a lot of women's names. There were some advantages to having a female-owned property during various times. So you'll see that, and you'll see a lot of sort of horse trading amongst families. You'll see a property go back and forth. In this case, the house goes back and forth pretty quickly between the Kellogg's. So you see here, the grantor number on this sale is 11, but Mr. Kellogg is the grantee, number 31, and then just in the next column, he's the grantor, and he sells it to William and Bessie Price. So what you do is you just follow that chain all the way down until it peters out. Usually these go to about the 1950s or so. Another thing to be aware of is, Denver has grown a lot bigger over the years, and they annexed a lot of different places. So you may have a house that's in Denver today and seems like it's very much in Denver, like it's in West Wash Park or someplace, but it may not have been in Denver when it was built. It may have been annexed. So if your house doesn't show up here, it doesn't necessarily mean anything. You just might not find it. But with this information, you can track the chain of title, and not necessarily who was living in the house either, because they may have rented the house out. So, and we'll have some instruments for dealing with that we'll talk about here. So that's a way you can track the chain of title. Another thing that people are really interested in, and you can get a lot of good information from, are building permits. We have here building permits from 1889 through 1892 with some gaps in there. And then 1900 through 1955. Permits 1915 through 1955 are here on microfilm. 1955 through 1970 for the city of Denver just don't exist. You'll hear a lot of different stories, flood, burning, whatever. I don't know which one's true. I don't think any of them are. I think it was just mismanagement that those building permits were lost. But if you really need a permit from 55 through 70, you will not find it. But you will find a lot of good information in the permits, and they will tell you the owner's cost. You can uncover a lot of interesting things like, when the basement remodel was done, or was that porch always there? Things like that will show up. We tend to have a sort of sweet spot in the permits for Park Hill. If you live in Park Hill, you're going to find a lot of good stuff generally, but they're pretty useful, and you can learn a lot about the home and how it developed over time. Now, of course, you can't come in and look at the microfilm today, but if you send us, if you say, hey, I'd like to know if there's building permits for my house, in this range, send us an email to history@denverlibrary.org and ask us for that. We can look it up. We're doing a lot more in-depth research than we used to do when our doors were open. We do have a bit of a backlog, so it might be about 4 to 6 weeks before you get that answer back, but you will get an answer back for sure. So That's building permits. And like I say, a lot of good information on those when you can find them. Some other resources we have that are really good, especially for older homes. We have what were called insurance or fire atlases. These are maps that will show, usually they'll show not just the streets, but the buildings and their footprint. And a lot of times they're building materials as well, particularly with the Sanborns, which we'll talk about. They'll show, what was there before. And they'll show you, you can find out a lot of things like, if you have maybe an outbuilding in your property and you wonder if that was how long that's been there, but you can't really figure out. A lot of times this will kind of show you, hey, maybe that wasn't there, or maybe that porch wasn't there, things like that. So we have the Robinson Atlas of 1887 and the Based Atlas of 1905, which are great for Denver. And those are available at digital.denverlibrary.org, as well as from our building history tutorial page. And they're high resolution scans, and they're pretty nice and they're pretty useful if your house falls in that area. We have Sanborn Fire Insurance maps. This was kind of the big name in that industry. And the Sanborns allow you to, again, see the materials of the house, things like that. Those are also, we have the Sanborns are available online. They're a little bit tricky to use, but you can use those online. And what we have online that we don't have here in the building are all the different versions of the Sanborn Atlas. So if you bought a Sanborn Atlas in 1900 and they would send you a yearly update and you would paste over all the, add in all the new buildings and things. So your hard copy would be current, but you wouldn't be able to tell what was at a space before. But when you look online, you can tell those. So those are pretty useful. You can compare and contrast and see kind of how the building in the neighborhood has changed over the years. And that's a pretty nice thing to have here, again, available online. We also have householder directories, which householder directories they're like a phone book, but they're by address instead of by name. So for your house history, that's pretty handy. And a lot of years, these directories will not only tell you who was living in the house, which is good if the house is rented, it'll tell you if the person rented or owned. Some years it'll tell you if they had a phone. A lot of years it'll tell you what their occupation was. So they're pretty good. And it'll tell you, if the person's a widow sometimes. They'll have some really good information with those. Some of our city directories, a lot of our city directories are available online at digital.denverlibrary.org. And a lot of phone books and directories are available from ancestry.com, which I'll talk about in a little bit, but you can access with your library card these days. So a lot of good information in phone books and householder directories. Some of the more contemporary phone books, we do have a pretty large phone book collection here. They're pretty delicate. As you can imagine, the phone book's only designed to last about a year, but we have them, and we can also look up things if you can't find them as well. Again, send those requests to history@denverlibrary.org. This is an area, building blueprints, that we tend to disappoint people a lot with because we really don't have that many blueprints. And a lot of us think, and I certainly thought this before I started this job, oh, maybe the city has blueprints of my house with floor plans and things, and they don't. And so we have some, but not a lot. If you live in a house that was designed by, one of our better known mid-century architects, Temple Buell, or some of the other ones, Fisher and Fisher, we may have the blueprints of the house. More than likely, we won't. Most people's houses just aren't that way. They were designed, by an architect somewhere else. They're sort of semi-mass produced, depending on where you live. And the plans just aren't with this. They're definitely not with the city, and the architect may be pretty tough to track down. So when it comes to floor plans, that is kind of our weak spot. And some of the houses in the Denver area were done from plans that you could purchase, from Sears, and these sort of not quite kit homes, but pretty close to kit homes. Sometimes we'll find a house that's like that. Honestly, I haven't found a lot that way. your best bet for finding a floor plan, you're really just going to see a footprint, and that's going to be in those atlases. Now, if your house is, we do have blueprints for it. We can get you those, but the request has to come from the owner of the house for privacy purposes if you want copies. So if we have your blueprints and you want them, you have to have the owner contact us directly. So unfortunately, this is one we just can't help you with too much. You can find out a lot of information about the people in the houses and what they did in the neighborhoods from newspapers. We have an extensive microfilm collection of the Denver Post and the Rocky Mountain News, a full run of each, along with some other metro area papers in Boulder and some things like that. We have some neighborhood papers as well. And we do actually have hard copies of the Denver Post and the Rocky Mountain News from the 40s going back to their beginning. But at a certain point, they stopped collecting those hard copies. But since you can't come into the library to look at those, there are some other resources there's some online pay sites like Newsbank you can use. There's some Colorado history newspaper sites that you can look at as well. And you can sometimes find some information about the people who live there that way. Obituaries are a great way to find out about people and their families. And we have online from that history.denverlibrary.org page, we have obituary indexes of the Denver Post and Rocky Mountain News. So if the person passed away in Denver and had their obituary there in Denver, we can help you track that down pretty easily. One caveat is, about 2000, 2001, when the Denver Post and the Rocky Mountain News joined their business operations under the joint operating agreement. If you've been around for a while, you'll remember they increased the prices of classified ads considerably. And because obituaries are technically classified ads, the price of an obituary in Denver went up tremendously. So at a certain point, you see the obituaries drop off. So if you're looking for somebody who was after 2001 in Denver, they could still be in there, but as the years go by, the chances of finding an obituary for them in the Denver Post or Rocky Mountain News start going down. So just something to bear in mind. There's a lot of great neighborhood history books. Anything by Phil Goodstein about Denver is going to be very detailed and very good. His books are getting a little tough to come by these days. We have them here, so if you have something specific that you're looking for from one of his books, maybe we can help you out with that. A source that's going to be really useful if you have a Denver Public Library card is Ancestry.com, and then of course all of our genealogy resources that we have. But if you do have a Denver Public Library card, you can access Ancestry's pay sites through our connection. So don't just go to Ancestry.com, go to Denver Library or history.denverlibrary.org, and you can access Ancestry.com there. You find a lot of good information there, including the phone books and things like that. Here in the building, we have architectural style guides. Some of those circulate, so you can get those from curbside pickup. And of course, the building history tutorial that I pointed you out to at the beginning has a lot of things that if you're going to spend some time doing this, go ahead and dig into that. If you're not in Denver, or maybe your house is more contemporary. I live in a home that was built in 1958 and is in the city of Denver, but we really don't have anything on it in the resources that I mentioned, but we have this other resource that's really great. It's a collection called the Real Estate Analysis Company. It's one of our manuscript collections, and this is a picture of it. And this is actually, there was a realtor who lived in the Denver metro area, and he manually collected all information about home sales, home listings, things like that, and he kept them in these very small notebooks, which you can see there's actually about 1,600 of them here. And they're very extensive, and they cover Adams, Arapahoe, Denver, and Jefferson counties pretty well. Sometimes you'll find the original listing, like with my home, I found an original listing with a picture Not always. Sometimes it'll just be a couple handwritten lines that tell when the house was sold. But if you live, in Southwest Denver, or, someplace that wasn't Denver in the mid 20th century or earlier, this collection might have it. So, if you're really not finding anything and you live in one of those neighborhoods, you can shoot us a request and we can maybe check this collection as well. It's a really good one. And kind of as an aside, this collection almost went to a trash dump. The man's family, after he had passed away, called our department a few years back and said, we have this, would anyone even want it there? And we said, yeah, that's great. And he said, great, come here today or it's going in the trash can tomorrow. So our department manager and one of our archivists went out there with the library truck and loaded these in, and they're just a great resource. So if you live in, post-war houses, and in those parts of Denver, like I say, Southwest Denver, you can find some pretty good information about your house with that. I wanted to go back to an area maybe I didn't touch on enough, is our photo collection at digital.denverlibrary.org. We have thousands and thousands of pictures on there and a lot of pictures of houses. It's pretty easy to search. I would always start a search with the address of the house because if an address is at all visible in a picture, our catalogers will put it on there. But if you don't find your house with the address, you can also look by neighborhood or by intersection, or if there's maybe a prominent building nearby, your house might show up in the background. And these are high resolution scans and they have a really good zoom on them. So you can find, you can zoom in and sometimes get some pretty good details, or a house that's in the background can turn out pretty clear. And that's kind of the basics for getting a house history going with us. Of course it is, everything's a little more complicated now. We are closed to the public, but we are open for phone reference. And this is our phone number here, 720-865-1821. Our hours are kind of, they might change a little bit as we go through this. We don't really know when our doors are going to be open again, but we are here and we are happy to help with your questions by phone or by email. And we really, we're happy to do that. Everybody here wants to be here and really enjoys our work. So we are happy to help you. I haven't really seen any questions come out, so I don't know if there is a backlog of them, but that is kind of all I have. If we have some questions, I'd be happy to take some.
Hi folks, yeah, and Brian, we've had a couple of questions throughout the program, but I think we've been working on them behind the scenes.
Oh, okay.
And I apologize to everyone that you're not able to chat to everyone. We had set that up, but it doesn't seem to be working this afternoon. But if you put a question into the chat box to one of the DPL folks, we can share it with Brian. And I'm seeing one right now actually asking if annexed towns had their own assessor's records, and if so, are they in a particular archive? So like Berkeley or an area like that.
Yeah, I haven't run across those. It would make sense. And some of them like Highlands, I feel like we have a little bit of information on, but it's really going to vary from town to town. I can't say that I've run into a lot of them though. You would think they would be out there. I don't know if they might have just been absorbed by Denver. But it's always worth taking a look in our collection for those individual townships and municipalities. And you can, if you just narrow your search to manuscripts, that's where that information would most likely be.
We had a request for the website for photos, and so that's digital.denverlibrary.org.
And I see a question from Leah, and she asked, she says, you mentioned it can be tricky to access Sanborn maps. Are there specific tips for navigating the searches online? And yeah, when you go to the Sanborn site, and you can get to it from the denverlibrary.org page if you hit research, and then you'll see it says databases A to Z and hit S for Sanborn. and you pull it up, and so it'll take you through, and it'll ask you the state and then the city, and you'll see lots of different years, and you click it open, and you'll see a page that just has all the pages of the map on it, and you click on it, and it'll ask you to open a PDF, and sometimes you're not always sure you want to do that, and if you click on it, it'll just open up a new tab on your browser instead of just launching a new PDF. And I find that when you get in there, you'll see that it's not a very intuitive site, and that aspect of it does not jump out. So you could have many pages open and not even realize it. And I would also look on those, well, the first couple pages will be index maps. So if you look at them, it'll show you it'll show you a map of all the area that is represented in that publication. And then, the page numbers of the area you're looking for will be on that map. And then you can go, and they're usually called plates, and you can go click on that specific plate. But they are PDFs, so you can zoom in and get a pretty good look at them. Like I say, the nice thing about the online version is it has all the editions that they did. So they might do Denver every 3 to 5 years or whatever. But like I say, the version we have here is from 1902, something like that, and it goes into the 30s, but it just has all these areas that have actual like pieces of paper pasted on. Like if they tore down a building and built a new one, they put a little paste over on it, and you could see that. So those aren't on the online version, but they're on the ones that we have here. So in some ways, the online version adds a little bit to it.
Brian, we got a shout out for accessing them through the Library of Congress page as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And, they did Sanborn maps for practically almost every town you can think of. We have some Sanborn maps that are a single page, and, the buildings in the town barely take up the whole page. So, this is one that's not limited to Denver. So, if you're curious, what did, Grandma and Grandpa's house in Trinidad look like? You can track those down. So that's one that's pretty good for the whole country as well.
We have a couple of questions. One was regarding searching by house address on Ancestry. I'm happy to take that one if you want, Brian, or I don't know if you want
to. Sure, yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
So if you go into Ancestry and go specifically to the census section, you'll see the different censuses that are available. And starting in, I believe it's 1880, you can search by address loosely in the 1880 census. And remember that Denver, it was in Arapahoe County through the 1900 census, so they don't show up listed as being Denver County until the 1910 census. But on the right-hand side of the page, you'll see a drop-down where once you're in the census is where you can navigate by state, and then by city, and then by enumeration district. That part gets a little bit more tricky, but on the handout that I will link to everyone again, there is a website where you can actually go for various censuses to get the enumeration district based on the cross streets of a particular address. So.
Yeah, and those census records are really useful if you're doing history. You want to learn more about the people who were in the house, because it'll tell you, of course, all the household members, their ages and occupations. And some years it'll have some interesting things like could the person read or write? Did they own a radio? How many weeks were they unemployed that year? Things like that. So you can glean out some interesting information too. And if the people were renting, that's a good way to track them as well.
We've got some newspaper questions. Wondering if there are any plans to scan Survey's Rocky Mountain Journal. They said it would fill some of the 1955 to 70 building permit gaps, especially for commercial and multifamily buildings. So that's the first part of the question. Okay. And then the second part is we've heard that DPL plans to scan the 1915 to 55 building permits, and do we have a time frame on that one?
No plans that I'm aware of for surveys, which is that's a good thing to point out, because there's a lot of good information in there, but I'm not sure surveys is indexed. As for scanning the building permits, I'm not sure what the status of that is. It's not a project that I'm familiar with, but you know,
So
it's not one that I've heard of.
Brian, I can speak about that.
Yeah, please.
We have actually worked to with one of our vendors to digitize that. So they have been digitized. We are now just trying to get it segmentized and put online. So it's been digitized. It just will take a little bit of time before we get it online.
Okay. Yeah, good questions. And that digitization it's very involved and very labor intensive and time consuming. So we do as much of that as we can, but they're big projects. Any other questions?
I'm not seeing additional questions. Michelle or James, do you have?
No, there are none that I see.
Okay.
No, I don't have any either.
Okay. Well, I will go ahead. I'm going to share. I shared the handout again. If anybody has difficulty downloading it, you can email us at history@denverlibrary.org and we'll send it to you. And then let me give you the links. James wanted me to give a shout out for Western History newsletter, which we promise we do not spam you. We just send a message once a month that generally has upcoming information about the department, new programs, new collections. We share content from all across our collection formats. So I'm going to send that for you there. And also I'm going to include the survey.
And I would reiterate that, you know, there's a lot of this stuff that you will be able to do online and from home. And, you know, if you do get into, you just can't figure out what's going on with a particular property or something, you know, do shoot us an email. We're really available to do that. And, you know, we'll dig as much as we can to help you out.
Yeah, and I just put into the chat the correct URL for the newsletter. So if you're interested in that, it's a great way to learn about Denver history, not only what's happening in the department, but Denver history. We have some wonderful librarians that write great blog posts, including Brian and Laura. They're one of our star writers. So please, if you can, I would encourage you to sign up for it. And if you do it now, you'll get the November one and by next week.
Brian, would you mind just going over a little bit how to access Ancestry? I've had a few questions, just how to access it through our website.
Yeah, if you go to denverlibrary.org, and let's see, I'm going to try to walk you through here. I'm just going to set up my map. I don't know if you'll be able to see the movements of my screen here, but let's see. Let's go up here to research. I don't know if you can all see that. Databases A to Z, A for Ancestry, and scroll down. You can get to it that way. And if you're at home, when you click on it, it'll ask you for your library card. If you don't have a library card, you can get one if you live anywhere in the state of Colorado, and you can apply for one and get one that'll get you into this from our website. But it's pretty straightforward, but make sure that you go in through denverlibrary.org. You can also go through our history@denverlibrary.org page. This is our version you won't see. And there's this genealogy page that has a ton of great resources, including that obituary index I was talking about. And that has pretty extensive information. Oops, I clicked the wrong one here. Sorry about that. The Denver Obituary Project is the one you really want. And start there in 1913, and we have great volunteers who volunteer for this department, people of all walks of life who have fastidiously taken information and put it into this index. So they're pretty good, and they take you through contemporary times too. So it's pretty useful tool. In fact, the more contemporary ones are a pretty recent addition to that. But that's really useful if you know from Ancestry when your person died, you can narrow down on an obituary pretty quickly with this. But then there's the Ancestry Library Edition that you can use as well. Any other questions or?
I got a message that the handout, the tutorial website link, is that what it is that wasn't working? So I think if you go through the navigation that Brian just showed, that would be probably the best way to get to Ancestry if you need to do that.
Yeah.
It can be kind of funny with access to databases sometimes.
Yeah. You'll know you're doing it right if it asks you for your library card number.
Yes. We had a question about mentioning Newsbank and newspapers. They mentioned that History Colorado has a Denver Post. Let's see, the Denver Post from the start through the 1980s, and they're wondering if other libraries have this. And not to my knowledge, I know that the content that's in Newsbank for the Denver Post and the Rocky Mountain News, I believe they scanned from History Colorado's negatives. So if there are other libraries that are subscribing to the Colorado unit of Newsbank, I would assume that they would have access to it as well.
And I'm not sure which ones do or don't.
Yeah. Oh, and I got a follow-up question to that. How do we get the Newsbank for the Denver Post and Rocky Mountain News through History Colorado? They currently, it's on-site access. So you would need to visit the research center at the museum and use the database while you're there.
And their research center is open to the public. There's some limitations. So I would call or, read up before you head down there to see what their specific rules are. They're so much smaller than us. They're able to do that a little bit better than we can currently. But they have great resources there.
Additional questions?
Yeah.
No? Okay, well, thank you for a great program, Brian, and thank you everyone for attending and for all of your great questions. If you have additional questions as you're working through your property research, please feel free to email us at history@denverlibrary.org. And as we mentioned, this video should be up on our YouTube page in the coming weeks. So we will most likely include a link to that in the newsletter. So yeah, that's, if you're wanting to get that update that's there, that would be the best way to do it. So thank you, everyone.
All right, thank you. I'll do the Zoom wave. Goodbye.
Bye.